Buddy, we and see Zoom, but we do have folks on Zoom with us also this morning. Thank you, Vince. And thank you so much, Greg, for arranging for us to be here today. It's such a great alternate place for us. Wonderful breakfast. Thank you. We have guests today. Our speaker, David Mullin, who will be from momentarily. We brought with him Scott Rogers. And we also have Michelle McGee. And of course, sorry, Elena. Welcome, everybody. We are going to start with a Rotary minute from Marty Lewin.
I'm so well rested. I decided to investigate water a bit. The reason is that like a lot of people, you sort of hear stuff about water, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But turns out that tomorrow is WWD. That's not World War D. That's World Water Day. This was established by the United Nations in 1993 as an international day to highlight the importance of safe water and bring awareness to the world water crisis, which still continues to this day. And this is part of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and the idea is to make substantial improvement with targets for the year 2030. Here's a few water facts which kind of amazed me. 784 million people around the world are without basic water services and water access. More people die from unsafe water than from all forms of violence, including war. 2 billion people, or about 1 in 4, lack access to a toilet or a latrine. Diarrheal diseases caused primarily by unsafe water and sanitation kill more children under 5 years old than malaria, AIDS, and measles combined. Diarrheal diseases kill 1 child every 60 seconds. About a quarter, 22% of health facilities in least developed countries have no safe water. And this just goes on and on. So the extent of this was not something which I certainly fully appreciated. And the theme of World Water Day focuses on various topics related to clean water, sanitation, hygiene, water scarcity, water pollution, inadequate supply, lack of sanitation, and the impacts of climate change, of course. And so the United Nations encourages a variety of activities on World Water Day, including various non-governmental organizations that use the day to raise public awareness. There's something called End Water Poverty, a global coalition with 250 partner organizations. And that sponsors World Water Action Month, which is this month, and offers an event planning guidebook. There's also a UN World Water Development Report that comes out every year on World Water Day. And lastly, there's a variety of initiatives in schools and universities to educate people about the importance of conserving and managing water resources. What this has to do with Rotary. Rotary has decided, Rotary International has decided to make this a major emphasis, and Rotary has signed on to working with all these organizations to raise awareness. And what Rotary has been involved in are several initiatives. One is an emphasis on learning how groundwater is protected, managed, and used in local areas. There's tremendous variability in the usage and management nationally and internationally. For example, in the US, groundwater makes up about 40% of the water used for irrigation, bathing, and drinking, whereas in other places, for example, Mexico City, it's about 95% of the population relies on groundwater. And so groundwater turns out to be a tremendously important part of this whole problem, maintaining it, making sure it's not depleted. And there's often a disconnect between groundwater reserves and usage. Some communities may be polluting groundwater reserves unknowingly, for example, through farming activities. So community education about groundwater is a key goal of World Water Day. Second, Rotary has signed on to raising awareness of the importance of taking care of groundwater in local communities by organizing local World Water Day events, utilizing social media, posters, panel discussions with local water experts, industry representatives, and farmers to spread the word about the importance of protecting and sustainably managing groundwater supplies. The third initiative is and this is really important from a club level, before embarking on Rotary service activities, it's important to consider the impact they will have on visible and non-visible water sources. Even small-scale construction can contribute high sediment loads to nearby streams and rivers. Septic systems, when not properly sited or maintained, can cause contamination of groundwater. So they suggest consulting with a hydrologist, or actually a hydrogeologist, prior to beginning projects that can impact groundwater supplies. And another local idea is encouraging the idea of putting in what you take out by ensuring that water, sanitation, and hygiene service projects balance groundwater recharge, for example, impact on dams, trenches, reservoirs, and groundwater extraction activities, for example, boreholes, wells, irrigation. Once again, consulting a hydrologist or environmental engineer with knowledge of the local watershed can be important in being sure that our projects don't have an adverse effect. So anyway, I learned a lot about water. It's good to drink also, and I think that's turned out to be a pretty important Rotary initiative. Thanks.
And you may recall that we recently made a $500 donation contributing to a water sanitation project in Donna. And in fact, I recently got an email confirming that they had in fact gotten their Rotary International grant, and the project is definitely going ahead. So that's great news. All right, next up is our inspiration from Greg.
Thanks. So when I thought about inspiration for this morning, first of all, it's great to see everybody. I'm sorry I haven't been able to make many meetings in the last few months. Convergence of a few things came to mind. Marty talked about World Water Day. Just 2 weeks ago was IWD, International Women's Day. And March is International Women's Month, and it last 2 weeks ago was also Amanda Gorman's birthday. I think it was the 6th of March, about 2 weeks ago. And then, February is Black History Month. And I wanted to share this poem by Amanda Gorman. She's a hero in my household. I have 3 girls and a son. And she's a poet laureate. In 2020 maybe. Amazing young woman. And I'm gonna have her read her poem, We Rise, in honor of International Women's Day and Women's Month. And you have the text in front of you, but I thought it would be more powerful to hear her recite it. So that's our inspiration today. See, hopefully all the tech will work.
Today, everyone's eyes are on us as we rise. Today is the day. Women are leading the way, speaking our truth. This poem is called We Rise. Today, everyone's eyes are on us as we rise. Today is the day. Women are paving the way, speaking our truth to power. And this is our duty to find the great beauty in rooting for other women, so they too know we are not victims. We are victors, the greatest predictors of progress. We press for change. A new dawn drawn into the open by women whose silence is broken. We push on and act on our responsibility to bring visibility to the most vulnerable, to bring freedom to those who don't have a choice, to bring volume to those who are using their voice. We clear a woman's way. We don't fear the day she steps into the light, because we are with her every step of that fight. There's a lot at stake. Making a difference always takes great courage. So we encourage women who dare to stare fear square in its face, women who've always shown that when one woman stands up, she is never alone. We know that when she rights a wrong, she will fight to bring others along. to the network, into the conversation, working together to change communities and nations for generations. Our world made all the stronger the longer women are able to sit at the table. It is her strength, her story, and her spirit, which inspires other vital voices to speak up when they hear it. So let it be said that light will be shed when our world is led by leaders ahead of the headlines. Those voices who are first on the front line, these women who stand up, knowing the wind, not by where it is, but by where it is blowing, leading worlds, not by how society is, but by where change is going. We all leap forward when one woman tries, when she defies with her rallying cries, her life does not rest. The best of tested women who call us all to rise, speaking their truth in this finest hour, that to their own power, every single woman is entitled. But it's how women empower others that makes our voices so vital.
Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Just a quick reminder that there are still some roles available for the Easter parade and egg hunt. And everyone should have received an email from Andy, I think, maybe yesterday. So if you are able to do something and you hadn't yet signed up, that's your opportunity. Is there any other announcements that folks have? Shall we move to our speaker? Okay, Charlie.
It's my privilege this morning to be able to introduce my good friend, the CEO of Green Mountain Habitat for Humanity, David Mullin. David has been a Williston resident and a near neighbor of mine for a long time. My wife was on a committee that was charged with selecting someone to become the leader of Habitat for Humanity, and it became very clear that there was an excellent candidate in David Mullin. David's wife Sherry plays in the town band. He has a couple of boys. He went to high school in Middlebury and then to Champlain College, and has worked in a series of sales jobs before he ended up in this place where he really belongs as leading this outstanding organization. So David, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, I have to say it's a pleasure to come back to the Williston-Richmond Rotary and see a lot of faces I haven't seen in a while. I don't know how you people don't age while I do. It's incredible. No, it's really nice, and it's nice to see you. It's really nice to have a good breakfast together. I really miss the breakfast. Habitat for Humanity, some of you may know intimately, as I know you do, about Habitat, but just to give you an overview, Habitat for Humanity International is just that. Building homes for families around the world. Not building homes for families, building homes with families. Because that's a concept, a core principle of Habitat, that these families put in sweat equity. In our case, locally here, family puts in 400 hours of sweat equity helping build their Habitat for Humanity home or their neighbor's Habitat house, or perhaps working some of those hours at the Habitat for Humanity restores. So Habitat builds all over the world. We certainly build different houses in Hawaii than we do in Vermont, and than we do in Australia. But the concept is building simple, decent, and affordable homes for families. And affordable homes is truly a topic in Vermont and actually across the country. Green Mountain Habitat, this is the 40th year. This is the 40th anniversary of Green Mountain Habitat being in Vermont. We cover northwestern Vermont, so Lamoille County, Chittenden County, Franklin, Grand Isle. There are 6 other Habitat affiliates around the state. Most of them are much smaller than Green Mountain. Green Mountain was the first. We build 5 or 6 homes a year. When I came on board, as Charlie said, I was fortunate enough to get this job, and I have the best job in the world. I get to see these families, where they've come from, where they currently are, and see them through the process of building their own home. And then upon occasion, meeting them afterwards and seeing what a difference this home has made to them and their family. In some cases, it is life-changing. It is changing the trajectory of that family. Habitat only does home ownership because the core principle of Habitat is that these families don't lack the ability to carry a home, they lack capital to get into a home. And that's what home ownership is about. It's about a structure, a safety, security, stability, but it's also about building capital, equity in their home. And that's why we only do home ownership. Green Mountain Habitat builds simple, decent, and affordable houses. A typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch house is 1,200 square feet. It's quality housing. Sometimes when folks think of affordable housing, you think, oh, that's cheap housing. No, in fact, our homes are inspected by Efficiency Vermont, which is an independent energy auditing. And they tell us that we are building some of the most energy efficient homes in Vermont. Now, don't get me wrong, we don't build boutique houses. There's nothing exotic. What I say is we're trying to make these homes as bulletproof as possible. There's a low maintenance involved. The mechanicals are extremely efficient. But we're building these homes for the long term for these families. The families that we work with are at or below 80% of median income. So they're working families. They just don't earn enough to qualify for a market rate home, especially in northwestern Vermont. I was talking to Walter earlier. We just completed a couple months ago a home in Colchester. After 40 years, it's the first house we built in Colchester. Hard to believe. We would love to build more in Colchester. This happened to be on a lot where there had been a house a few years earlier that had burned down. And the family was upside down in the mortgage. Long story short, the town ended up buying the property back, tearing the remains of the house down, sat on it for a little while, and we're looking to raise some money for the hockey rink. And one of their select board said, oh, why don't we ask Habitat if they could buy it? That word, that question is what makes the difference. So they reached out to Habitat and we said, we do buy land. We've only had land donated twice in 40 years. One of them was here in Williston. And so we said, let's look at the property. What can we build on that property? And we were able to buy that property from the town of Colchester. We built a 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath ranch with a nice basement on a nice little lot. We have an appraisal done every time we complete the house. That 3-bedroom ranch house appraised for $400,000. That's just an example of simple, decent, affordable housing. That's what it appraises for today. But because of the volunteer labor, now we hire plumbers, electricians, excavators, licensed people. But most of the labor to build a Habitat for Humanity house is volunteers. Most of the volunteers on the Habitat site have never done construction before, which really puts a shiver down the back of somebody like Chris that knows how to build. Most builders will say, look, give me a couple of people that know how to build a house and I'll build a good house. Habitat goes to the other end of the spectrum and says, give me 200 or 300 people that don't know much about building and we will build a good house. And we do. It takes us about 12 months. That house in Colchester, because of the volunteer labor component and because of some grants, and I'll mention Vermont Housing Conservation Board because it comes up. The property transfer tax, a portion of that goes towards land conservation and affordable housing. We couldn't do it without that particular grant. So that grant is a pass-through right to the family to lower the cost of the mortgage. And that grant stays with the house perpetually. So between some grants that we were able to get and the volunteer labor from the community, that house to that family has a mortgage of $125,000. So for that family, their mortgage, tax and insurance on a brand new, super energy efficient home was less than they were paying in rent. So now that family has that stability. Their utility costs are gonna be very low because it's efficient. Now the children have a place to come home to at night that is a place to do their homework, a place that's healthy. Indoor air quality is extremely important. All of these houses, because they're so airtight, have mechanical ventilation systems. And so they're healthy houses because what we're building is homes for the long term. The average person in the United States, the last time I looked, stays about 7 years in their home before they turn over. Habitat families stay much, much longer for a couple of reasons. One, they built the house. They know it. We had one single mom that said, I know where to hang a picture anywhere in this house because I helped build it. That's the confidence that builds into it. So these affordable houses end up being a home for a family for a much, much longer period of time. And that's the stability that Habitat and homeownership bring to a community. And that's why it's so important to get the word out that number one, affordable housing is not cheap housing, it's quality housing. And that homeownership, affordable homeownership is important to the fabric of a community because these are families at or below 80% of median income that are working in the school, that are working to run that hospital on that hill up there. Not the physicians and not the other folks that make that hospital work, but all of the folks that hold up that hospital, if you will, and make it run from the inside. These are working families and they don't have that stability. And when you have a 1% or less rental rate, like we do in this area, what that does is.
Any salt reels or fresh baked pizza or Caesar salad. The cold meal is chicken Caesar salad. Thanks, have a great day, y'all.
That was the hook. These families end up, being part of the community. And with that 1% rental rate, what happens is people can't move. So when we have an applicant come in to, apply for a Habitat home, we do a site visit to see where they're living now. You would be amazed at where some people are living. You know, we think of substandard housing or poverty housing as, that's a tar paper shack in Louisiana. No, it's right here. It's in Williston. People can't imagine that we have substandard housing. We go into rental units where, the family is renting out the lower half of a split level ranch where there's mold all around the floor. We're like, why don't you tell the landlord to do something about that? That's not healthy. We can't, we're afraid because the landlord will say, if you don't like it, I have about 25 people that would love to rent this right now. So they're afraid. Outlets that don't work, lights that don't work, windows that breathe. All of that is here, and these families are paying a fortune. We had a house that we were building a house with a family in Charlotte. And they come, they're doing their sweat equity, we're working side by side. And the mom says, yeah, we haven't had water in about 2 weeks. What? So like Martin was talking about water. Well, you don't think of that here. There's no shortage of water. 2 weeks. They're renting a house in Moncton. They're not, getting it free. They asked the landlord said, I don't have the money to fix it just yet. So at another house in Milton, we built this little ranch house in front of this mobile home that this family was living in. Single mom, 4 children, her mother living in a 2-bedroom mobile home. She worked at the high school as a facilities or janitor to support the family. One day we're building a house, and, working, the crews are working. She comes in and says, could somebody come in and help? The toilet is falling through the floor. So again, she's working full time to take care of the family. So those are some of the dynamics that are going on. Later today, there's a press conference at one of our houses. We're building on Manhattan Drive in Burlington. And the current mayor is holding a press conference to talk about new zoning regulations to help create more density in the city of Burlington. Because there are only so many lots. And so if you don't get creative, you think there's a homeless problem now? You think there's a housing problem now? Keep the zoning you've got, because it'll only get worse. And so the mayor is advocating for some significant changes in zoning. So zoning can be a problem for housing, or it can be a piece of the solution. So that's the role that people have in affordable housing in every single community. And the more people talk about the need for affordable housing, sometimes we call it workforce housing. The employers in the community need to start talking louder about it, not just the nonprofit organizations, because you hear once in a while an employer say, I can hire somebody from out of state, but they have no place to live. You have the Beta down the road. Believe me, they probably don't have too many people qualifying at 80% median income. They can't find people at the salaries that they're paying. So how could that possibly be a scenario where a local working family could afford a home? And so that's part of what we're trying to communicate to folks, is that one, you have the ability to help make a difference. Green Mountain Habitat is a federated organization. We receive no funding from Habitat International. It's all raised locally, all of it, whether it be individual donors, and we have some in the room that have supported Green Mountain Habitat for a long time. Thank you. Grants from local businesses or family foundations, and some state, like Vermont Housing Conservation Board, occasionally a federal grant. Unfortunately, federal grants come with some huge tentacles. The new federal grants have a Build America, Buy America. Great concept, phenomenal. Keep the money in the United States, help build the United States. That will drive the cost of Habitat for Humanity homes through the roof. So consequently, sometimes huge amounts of money are available for affordable housing. We can't possibly, I'd have to hire somebody to administer that grant. So we say, no, we're gonna build a few less houses. We build 5 or 6, as I said. Our board has made a commitment to raise that to 10. Because there's a need, the need is there. We have some of the resources. We need more volunteers. We need volunteers. You can volunteer for one day on a Habitat site or a Habitat resource, or you can come every Tuesday and Thursday, like some of our volunteers have come for more than 18 years. 18 years of volunteering. I think sometimes it's the spouse, the husband or the wife that says, go volunteer. Yeah. So I want to recognize Dave Erickson and Charlie McGill, 2 of our board members. That's an example of not only being involved in affordable housing, but participating. So I realize time's a factor here. You've got other folks, questions or anything I could answer? Yes.
It isn't so
Jude.
much a question, but when I was listening to you, it's thinking when I was very little, after the Second World War, a lot of families that had family overseas in war-torn areas were able to pool their money with some of their people that were already here, and they could bring their families over as long as they had housing for them.
Sure.
And so we lived in a three-story place, and that was purchased, and so we were going to be evicted. And I remember being a very little kid And we came within 2 weeks of having everything put out on the street, which they actually did do.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to my parents, what's gonna happen to my dolls if it rains? So you're talking about the parents too, and the concern, I mean, my parents couldn't find a rental because they had 3 kids and a doll. So we finally ended up in a public housing development, which was very, very racially divided. It was a very contentious place, but nonetheless, it was a roof over our head. And I keep thinking of all the children that you are helping who will never forget the fact that they actually have a secure home of their very own.
Absolutely.
So I really commend you for what you're doing. It's wonderful.
Jude, thanks for sharing that story. That's important. That's an example. And there are examples after examples after examples. Bill?
As you know, I live basically across the street from the Restore.
Yeah.
How's that doing in relative to your business? Is that helping you? Does you, income?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We actually operate 3 Habitat stores, one in Williston, one in Milton, and one in Swanton. And those Habitat for Humanity stores, a thrift store, people donate furniture, appliances, housewares, artwork, you name it. It's amazing what people donate. We have people donate one appliance. We have people that say, hey, come up to Stowe. We just sold our house. We already have a house full of furniture in Connecticut. Take everything in the house. Those Habitat for Humanity restores, that money stays local to help us build houses. And the Williston store builds about 2 houses a year. So those donations to the Habitat Restore, and we pick up for free, can't drop it off, are critical. That's an example of a very important social enterprise for Green Mountain Habitat. Yes?
Thank you. What is the process? What is the process if somebody, if the family leaves the house? Does it remain at the same selling level, you know, or in perpetuity?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So every house Green Mountain Habitat builds is perpetually affordable. There's a covenant on that property. Because we sell the house to the family at cost, you know, they could flip it the next day for twice. So there's a covenant on that property that says that house will be perpetually affordable. That family is entitled to all of their equity, if they wanted to sell it at any time, all of their equity back in 25% of the appreciation of the property during the time that they owned it. So that's how they're building capital. And then we would find another qualified family to move into that. I'll quickly give you an example of how that works. 2 years ago, we had a family call me that we had built, one of the first ones I had worked on in Burlington. And they said, Dave, we love the house, but we've outgrown it and we need to move. I said, okay, we'll find another qualified buyer. We did that. So at that table, again, they had been in the house about 16 years. So their equity plus their share of the appreciation on that home that Habitat for Humanity and they and the community built. At that table in the morning, the closing table, they walked away with close to $100,000. The equity and the appreciation. We closed in the morning, so another family was able to move into that house. In the afternoon, that same family closed on a market rate home. It was up in Fletcher that they had to go through to get one. But they were able to use that capital as a down payment. So it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It enabled a family to take responsibility for their own and move up. And that's why we say Habitat is a hand up, not a handout. And your donation to a Habitat for Humanity home is almost like an endowment because we sell that house to the family at cost. So we buy the land, we build the house, we sell it to them at cost. We take that money immediately So if you helped make a donation to help us buy the front door on that house, your donation is going into the next house also. So from a nonprofit standpoint, that's a very unique model. We have lots and lots of phenomenal nonprofits, thank goodness we do, but the food shelf, once that can of soup is gone, it's gone. But Habitat is able to take your donation or a grant and recycle it over and over and over again. So it's making a difference. Barbara,
I just want to say, Dave, we've missed you. We'd love for you to come back.
thank you, I appreciate that. I hope I'm able to, yes.
I was wondering about volunteering, like, are there any requirements or a minimum age for volunteers?
Thank you for asking. You can go right on our website, vermonthabitat.org, and you can look at the schedule to sign up. So you can pick a day that works for you, and you just sign up online. There are no skill requirements. We ask that you not wear open-toed shoes. It's a construction site, or something like that. But volunteers from all walks of life help build Habitat homes, because you're not building the whole house, you're building that one wall. As I've said before, at the end of the day, you say, hey, I built that wall. It's crooked, but I built it. So age-wise, because it is a construction site, inherently there are dangers, if you will. So no one under 16 is allowed on the site while construction is going on. Although lots of times I've led crews of elementary school children that are underage when construction's not going on, and we're doing the landscaping and shoveling dirt and everything else, planting trees. So almost anybody can volunteer on a Habitat site. And you don't have to do anything you don't want. If they're putting shingles on the roof and you don't like going on a ladder, we got another job right here on the ground. There's always something for everybody. Plus, we have lots of people who just bought a house and they want to learn some of how to take care of my house, how to maintain it. So you get trained on, how to operate a power tool. And I will tell you that we have more trouble with men coming on the site that think they know how to do this, where sometimes people who've never done it don't mind asking, how do I operate this thing? And we do a training on that. Walter.
So, we were talking before, and I think that, you have this area, at least you've got a good idea of how to handle this area. And we also talked that on the other end, there are people who just pay whatever they want for their house. What about people that are trying to come to Vermont and they, who's there to support them if they don't quite make it, they don't have enough cash or whatever it is?
It's, the same thing happens, I think, they call it the donut hole in Social Security, or in between. The same exact thing happens in the case of what you're talking about, where Habitat, we consider ourselves the last rung on the financial ladder to be able to get into a home. It's the only way, families at this income. But if you're not of the income where you can buy market rate home or anything you want to buy, or you're at a place where some organizations like Champlain Housing Trust will go up to 120% of median income for subsidized rental or some home ownership. But if you're not in that category, either below or way above, then you're in that segment of our local community where, number one, the inventory isn't there because it's not profitable for a builder to put food on their table unless they build a certain cost house. So unless you're way up here or at or below some of these income levels, you're at that point where they're just inventory isn't available. The housing at a price that you can afford for a professional. We had an attorney on our board. She lived in White River Junction. She commuted up to our board meetings. Her company was in both places. She was on a track to be a partner. And so she decided to move up this way. She and her husband. She said they couldn't afford the houses that are on the market. It was only through a friend that the house didn't even get on the market that they were able to get something. So that situation exists for a lot of professionals, and it prevents professionals and other people, working families, from moving into our communities. And so what you have is people that can't afford to move, people that don't need to move because they can do anything they want. And there's this stagnation in the housing market. Sure. Yes. I'd
like to address the landlord situation that you spoke about. You were speaking about the minority of landlords.
Oh, for sure.
I was a landlord for a number of years and I was a good landlord. I had good properties, but I always took the rat because of those few landlords.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. The majority are good landlords and good people.
Absolutely. And thank goodness for them, because we need every single one of those units. And sometimes the zoning plays a role on limiting the good landlords from doing more. So, yeah.
Hi, Dave. So it sounds like you buy land or have it donated, but mostly buy land. The land that you're buying, what kind of percentages there's no sewage or water on it versus, you know, it was a house structure that had to get taken down?
Right.
Because the sewage and water situation would probably limit you, especially like, you know, taking farmland or something and building 10 homes.
About half of our properties, you know, we could buy a property outside of town that we have to put septic and water and sewer and electric and all of that in, versus one in Burlington that we just go out to the street and get it. We would much rather that, but again, it's that limitation. So about half. Also, we used to build just single ranch houses. You know, that was common of what we built. Now, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. Soon we're gonna build 20 units in Heinsberg, sixplexes, townhouse style. Because if we can take that cost of land and cut it up into multiple families, because we sell it at cost, then we can lower the cost of that house. So more and more we're doing that. I realize.
Well, what about getting a group build? Suppose that this Rotary Club or all the Rotary clubs in the county wanted to get together and have a build.
That would be phenomenal. We call it team building. Lots of companies pay thousands of dollars to send their staff out to a ropes course to build a team. You can go to a Habitat for Humanity site and build a team. Now, some teams come out and we provide lunch and a t-shirt, and pay a fee, a donation. And you can find out about that, but you don't have to do that. We would love to have the Rotary Club come out and help a family move into a home of their own.
A nice idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know we probably could come up with a million more questions. Unfortunately, we.
Thank you
do
so
need to wrap
much.
it up. Thank you so much. Oh, one other small task